am revisiting a video that I filmed about 1.5 years ago. I am going to be re-ranking my NATASHA Denona palettes. I have a total of 22 NATASHA Denona eyeshadow palettes, and I have ranked them from least favorite to favorite. So I'm gonna go through those with you guys today. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy, and let's go ahead and get started. So I will have my original ranking linked down below in the description box in case you're interested in watching that. I briefly went through it just to kind of see where I was at as far as like makeup opinions go, and things have changed. Some things haven't, but I've actually like rearranged quite a few. So we're gonna start off with the worst NATASHA Denona palette in my opinion. Obviously these are my opinions, and based on my personal preferences, NATASHA Denona is very expensive, and I do have some regret purchases when it comes to the brand. So they are one of my favorites, but I will say that I do think I spent a little bit too much on NATASHA Denona over the last few years. So starting off in 22nd place. So this is my least favorite palette. This is actually the same as last time. We have the Star palette from NATASHA Denona, obviously. This palette is ridiculously expensive. I don't even know if they still sell this. I think this was like $170. I literally cannot believe that I bought this. What was I thinking? Hopefully I at least bought it during a sale or something. I just don't love the color story here. I've only used this a handful of times. I'm actually going to be decluttering my entire makeup collection next month in just like a couple weeks, and I will already tell you that you will see some NATASHA Denona eyeshadow palettes in that declutter, which is a big step for me. So yeah, I don't love this palette. I don't love the formula. I don't love the color story. It's way too expensive for what it is, and it's just not, it's not worth it. It's not great. I haven't ever really loved my eyeshadow when I use this, and it's just gonna be a big pass for me. I would not recommend this palette. If you love it, I'm so happy for you, but this is, no. 22nd place, aka last place for the Star palette. Next up in 21st, we have the Cranberry palette. I'm pretty sure that I have not touched this palette since I last filmed this video, which was again July of last year, 2021. It's a pretty palette. I like the colors. The formulas are just not good. I don't even know if they still sell this. Again, I also know that NATASHA Denona has reformulated some of their palettes. I don't know which ones of those have been done. I kind of got tongue-tied a little bit there. I don't know which palettes have been reformulated since I have purchased them, but this may be one of them if they even still sell this. Again, I have honestly no idea, but there's some weird like cream formula in here, and it's just not a very like, I don't know. I just feel like I can't get like a variation of looks from this palette. Not my thing. So definitely not a favorite of mine. Next, we have another one of these 5-pan palettes. This was actually a BoxyCharm exclusive. This is the Peak palette. Again, I have definitely used this palette like maybe once or twice. The collector in me definitely influenced some of these purchases. This one, not so much because it was in a BoxyCharm. And it's a beautiful palette. Love the warm tones, but it's just too like orangey for me on the daily. I am very neutral with my eye looks. Recently, I always have been, but especially recently, and these types of orangey warm tones is just not what I would reach for. So again, not a huge fan of this palette. It's 4 mattes and 1 shimmer. The shimmer is pretty. That's probably my favorite shade in the palette, but definitely not a must-have for me, and I think that might have been a BoxyCharm exclusive. I could be wrong, but I don't think I've ever seen this anywhere else. In 19th place, we have the Tropic palette. This one, again, I have not gotten the use out of these palettes that I should have with how expensive they are. This is a beautiful palette. I do love the color story here. I think it's really fun. I love all the neutrals with some fun pops of like, I don't want to call them pastel because I feel like they're a little bit more vibrant than pastels, but they're kind of pastel-ish. So I think the color story here is beautiful, but I just never reach for this palette. I have used this a few times, but I could not tell you the last time that I used it, let alone like thought about it. I kind of forgot that I even had that palette. So again, definitely not a bad palette, but just not up to like my personal preferences anymore as far as colors go. Next up, this one is really embarrassing, and I almost like didn't want to show you guys this. So next up, in 18th place, we have the Sunset palette. So in my first ranking video, I was embarrassed that I hadn't ever used this palette, and that was a year and a half ago, and I still have not used this palette. It looks like one shade is swatched, this one right here. But apart from that, it's untouched. I put it here because the color story is beautiful and I like the variation, but I do not deserve this palette. I don't. So we're just gonna sneak that one in there and move on and just pretend like we didn't see that. Yeah, talk about embarrassing. Oh my gosh. This next one is the Circo Loco palette from, I always keep saying it, from NATASHA DENONA. Obviously, it's a NATASHA DENONA ranking video. This is a really pretty palette. It's very fun, it's very colorful. Not my go-to, I just don't wear colorful eyeshadow looks very often, but I will say the formula of this one is outstanding. I feel like NATASHA DENONA palettes have improved so much over the years. I've been buying them for a very long time, like 4 or 5 years, I want to say. And I feel like the newer ones are always better than the old ones, which I don't know. I feel like sometimes there's classic products, staple products, but with NATASHA DENONA, typically the newer ones are better, in my opinion. So again, this is a really pretty palette. It's just not very wearable for me personally. I don't reach for it too often. I did do a review on that palette if you're interested, but yeah, other than that, I just don't typically reach for it too often. Next up, we have another one, another one of these $129, $128, $130-ish palettes. I've used this a few times, but just, I feel like these older palettes just don't have the shimmers that I'm looking for, so then I don't really reach for them. Although there are metallic-y type shimmer shades in here, they're just not super impressive. I know you get a ton of product in these palettes, but just not worth the price for me. I love that NATASHA DENONA does a lot of the midi palettes, the $65 ones, and you'll see those at the top of my list. Literally all of them are above the $130 palettes, which is kind of crazy. So this is the Lila palette. It's really pretty. I love the purples in here. It's very deep and dark compared to my daily go-to eye looks, so it's just not one that I reach for a ton, so it's a little bit lower on the list. Next, we have some of the little mini $25 palettes. We have the mini Lila, so this is like a mini version of the one that I just showed you. It is really pretty. I think it's a great representation of the Lila, but again, I don't really reach for this often. I don't know the last time that I used it. That's what I want to stop saying about my makeup, which is why we're doing this huge declutter in a couple weeks. Next, we have the Love palette. This one is beautiful. I love the color story. I love the pinks and purples and mauves. Definitely more my color palette here. I love this palette. I think it's fantastic. Above that, we have the mini Biba palette. This one I also love. It's definitely more neutral, more like wearable for me. I think it's a great travel palette. I think it's so cute. I love that there's a shimmer with some different tones of mattes, and I just feel like I could create a super easy, simple look with this. Again, not a ton of versatility in this palette, but I do love the color story and love the quality of those shadows. Next up, we have the Gold palette. I'm pretty sure this was the first NATASHA DENONA palette that I ever purchased. It's a beautiful palette, and it definitely, like, I definitely get good, like, nostalgic feelings when I think about this palette. It's very green and blue. I don't know, I just think it's really pretty, and I love, this one definitely has some more of those like special shimmery shades, more so than like the Biba, not the Biba, I'm sorry, the Lila palette and the Sunset and the blue one, the Tropic palette is what it's called. Anyway, I think this is a great palette, and I'm pretty sure they discontinued this. I could be wrong, but that's a classic. Definitely, it's probably higher up on my list because of the nostalgia, but I do think that that is a beautiful, wonderful palette. Next, we have the Mini Star palette. This one is actually fantastic, and I love this one way more than the regular Star palette, which is my least favorite NATASHA DENONA palette. I think the color story is so pretty, and I just think that this is beautiful. I think it's a great little palette. I love her little palettes. I used to like larger palettes, but recently I've been liking smaller, not like miniature. I mean, I like these little 5-pan palettes, but I also like just like more concise palettes and not like huge palettes that are this big anymore. So love that one. And then we have this one, which is the Mini Nude palette, which I don't believe I had in my last ranking, but this one is so pretty. I've only used it a few times, but I used it a couple days ago and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to start using this more. It's in my everyday makeup drawer right now, and I love this palette. I think it is absolutely fantastic. Next up, we have the Biba palette. So this is a great neutral palette. I will say, I wish there was more like fantastic shimmers in here. You do have a few, but it is a really pretty neutral palette, and I have this one above the Mini Nude only because there's more options. I feel like I gravitate towards this one more now because I just think this is like the perfect little set of eyeshadows, but this one has so much more like variation. This is my last like super expensive NATASHA DENONA palette, but I do think that it's great and very, very wearable and usable for like a neutral eyeshadow lover. And now we're getting into the good stuff. I mean, it's all good stuff, but now we're getting into the smaller palettes, like the midi palettes. These are just the best. The size is better, the price is better. I personally feel like the formulas are better. I love the midi palettes. I will have all of these palettes linked down below if you're interested, if they're still available. I know some of these are definitely not available anymore, but I will link as many as I can for you. So next up we have the Zendo palette. This is one that I was originally kind of disappointed by. I hyped this one up a lot in my head. I was so excited when I heard they were creating a Zendo palette because the mini Zendo came out first and I loved that palette so much, and then this one came out and it looked nothing like the mini Zendo, so I was a little bit disappointed, but I do still think that this is a beautiful palette. You have a warm tone side and a cool tone side. I like that the cool tone side is like green, like it's not like red and blue, it's kind of like orangey clay tones and then these really unique greenish cool tone shades. I don't know, I just think it's a really unique palette and I do like it a lot. Not my favorite, but definitely in my top probably 10. This is 8. So we're in top 8. Number 7. This one was tricky because I didn't know where to put this one. This is actually the Glam face palette. So technically it's called a face palette, but there's still 5 eyeshadows in here. There's 5 eyeshadows, 2 cheek products. So we're including it in this video. I cannot explain my love for this shadow right here and this one right here. Amazing. Fantastic. Honestly, this whole row is fantastic. This is the light one, by the way. There's light and then there's a darker one. This is light. This is the only one that I have. I will say that I did love this whole thing at first, but now I feel like the cheek products are just kind of like a waste of space. I wish it was separate, like a separate duo. Don't love this cheek formula. It's like very dry now. I feel like it didn't age well in the palette. The highlighter itself is beautiful, but I don't know, just the eyeshadows here are the star of the show in my opinion in the Glam face palette. So I still had to rank it up there pretty high. In 6th place, we have the NATASHA DENONA My Dream palette. This one is a much newer release. I think this is the most recent one that I have. She did just recently come out with the retro glam, and I want it so bad. I'm just trying. You guys see how many NATASHA DENONA palettes that I have that I don't get enough use out of, so I'm trying to be more responsible and not buy makeup that I'm not gonna use. But I'm deciding to wait and like sit on it, think about it, because I do think that I need that palette eventually, but I'm trying to just wait and like think about it more, spend some time. But this one is absolutely beautiful. I think that this is a gorgeous color palette. There are a lot of deeper, darker shades in here, which I wouldn't use on the daily, but the formula of this palette is so good. Definitely one that I would recommend. Next, we have the Love palette. This one is so pretty. I love all of the pinks and purples. I don't know what it is about pink and purple. They just make me so happy, especially pink. So I think this one is so freaking cute, and I have gotten some pretty good use out of this palette. I am happy with this one, definitely top 5 material. In 4th place, we have the Bronze palette. This one is stunning if you guys like bronzy warm toned eyeshadows that aren't like straight up orange. Like, this is a really good example of a warm toned palette that's not, it's more like a yellow warm tone, not like red warm toned. That makes sense. I just think that this is a beautiful palette. I love the shimmers in here, and this one is fantastic. Definitely recommend that one. Top 3, are you ready? 3rd place, we have the Mini Zendo palette. I love this palette. I think it is so freaking cute. I don't know what it is. This like green color is the best color in the palette. I love the deep purpley tone, and then paired with these like muted warm tone shades, there's something magical going on here, and I just wish that the regular Zendo palette looked more like this. I don't know. I'm pretty sure there were no repeated shades. Like, they didn't take any of these and put them in the Zendo palette, like none. So I don't know why they're correlated, but I think that this is a beautiful palette, and I would highly recommend this one. I am just obsessed with that palette. In 2nd place, we have the Glam palette. This is actually what I'm wearing on my eyes today. I did a pretty simple, cool toned eye look. This is absolutely stunning. If you like cool toned eyeshadow, you will love this. There is still some hints of warmth in here though, which I love because it's not just like a grayscale palette, but it is still overall very cool tone. So I think that this one is fantastic. The shimmers are beautiful. Love this formula. Definitely would recommend this. I feel like if you're a cool tone lover, you need Glam, and if you're a warm tone lover, you need Bronze. Now we're gonna talk about the best NATASHA DENONA eyeshadow palette. It is my favorite of the ones that I have. I can only speak for the ones that I have. But this is my favorite, and this is the Retro palette. So my top 2 palettes are Retro and Glam. So like, I feel like I have to have the Retro Glam palette. Like, it only makes sense. And it's beautiful. It's like pink and green and just like amazing. So I definitely feel like I'm gonna eventually need to buy that palette because it's beautiful. But the Retro palette, are you guys ready to see the inside? It's perfect. I love this palette. I love the mauve, like, overall theme here. It's like, it's pink, but it's not too pink. It's purpley, but it's not like purple. I don't know. I just love the muted tone of this, and the shimmers in here are fantastic. Everything about this palette is absolutely exceptional. I love it so much. I wore this to Allie and Corey's wedding. I have worn this so many times. I trust it for a special occasion. I'm actually going to a wedding in a couple days, and I will most likely be wearing this palette. I think it's absolutely stunning, and I just love it so much. And that is why it is my top ranked NATASHA DENONA palette. So like I said, declutter coming soon. I will be decluttering some NATASHA DENONA palettes. I'm trying to get out of the collector mentality a little bit. I still do love, I love collecting all kinds of things. makeup included, but I don't want to collect so much makeup, and I need to let go of some of these palettes that I've had for years and literally not used, or used like once or twice. So it's time. I'm ready. I've been preparing myself. These are gonna be the most savage declutters that you have ever seen from me. And I feel like they're gonna be pretty satisfying. At least I hope so. I'm a little nervous, but I'm also excited at the same time because I feel like it's gonna be less clutter, less stress, less to worry about. So yeah, if there's a takeaway from this video, this is an amazing palette. Honestly, any of the midi palettes are great, along with the mini Zendo. Those are the best. The best. Mini nude also, I love that one, and I feel like that's a really good one to recommend because it's so wearable. But yeah, that was my NATASHA DENONA ranking video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Again, I will have these palettes linked down below in the description box in case you're interested in picking one up for yourself for Christmas or for someone else, or just, you know, any occasion at all. I just know that the holidays are coming up soon, and I feel like these like midi palettes would be just like an outstanding holiday gift to yourself or someone else. So that's gonna be it. I love you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.